It's always just been about how do we create the most memorable experiences we can so we can have these like cherished things to look back on. And that's been the essence of the Japan trip, those other ski trips, and that's why I create them.
Welcome to the Wealth Strategy Secrets of the Ultra Wealthy podcast, where we help entrepreneurs like you exponentially build wealth through passive income to live a life of freedom and prosperity. Are you tired of paying too much in taxes, gambling your future on the stock market, and want to learn about hidden strategies for making your money work for you? And now your host, Dave Wolcott, serial entrepreneur and author of the best-selling book, The Holistic Wealth Strategy.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Wealth Strategy Secrets of the Ultra Wealthy. Today we're diving into one of my favorite topics, travel hacking and experiential luxury travel. As entrepreneurs and freedom seekers, we're not just building wealth to accumulate numbers in a bank account. We want to create amazing experiences, see the world, and enjoy our time with family and friends. But let's face it, travel can be a hassle. Long flights, inconvenient layovers, expensive airfare, and subpar accommodations can drain the joy out of the experience. That's where today's guest, Eli Facenda, comes in, known as the travel guy. Eli is an expert in credit card points optimization, luxury travel hacking, and designing high-end travel experiences, all without breaking the bank. After traveling the world and cracking the code on how to fly business and first class for pennies on the dollar, Eli built a system to help entrepreneurs maximize their credit card rewards, travel perks, and global experiences. In this episode, we're unpacking how to fly first class and stay in five-star hotels for free using credit card points, the biggest mistakes people make when trying to redeem points, the best credit card strategies for earning and leveraging travel rewards, insider tips on private flights, exclusive experiences, and luxury upgrades, and why planning your travel 10 to 11 months in advance or within 2 weeks can save you thousands. If you love to travel or dream of taking bucket list trips in first class style without paying full price, this episode is for you. But before we dive in, I just want to remind everyone that if you've been enjoying the concepts on the show, feel free to head over to pantheoninvest.com where we have more free resources. We actually do complete articles on every show. So if you've ever been driving and needed to take notes and want to go back and reference something, we have everything listed there, all the links and everything on the show for you. And if you would like to connect with me, I'd love to hear from you, love to connect with you and see if we can help. There's a calendar link there that you can book a call with me. So head over to those free resources. And now for today's show. Eli, welcome to the show.
Dave, thanks for having me, man. Excited to be here.
Yeah, 100%. I know the audience is really going to enjoy this one, as am I. One of the things, I love to do is creative financing and financial hacking. And you bring that to us through the realm of luxury travel, experiential travel, which I think is really amazing because I think, especially as entrepreneurs or freedom seekers, that's what it's all about. Right? We're trying to use our financial capital to actually create amazing experiences in our life. We're trying to, travel to different destinations. And we want to do that in a way that really respects our time, right? Because time is your greatest asset. And so if you're flying at the back of the bus in economy, or you're going through all these different transfers in different countries, I've now traveled to over 50 countries. I've been to 6 continents. And I can assure you, I've been through it all. And it can be really demoralizing as well as frustrating, right, to do that and wreck that experience. So really excited to have you on today and really hear your wisdom about travel hacking, how we can do that, and really take advantage of all of these cool things that there are that you've actually uncovered. So why don't we start with your story a little bit, Eli, and tell us how you became an entrepreneur and then eventually got into this kind of travel hacking business.
Yeah, they coincided at really the same time. So I'll take you back to, this has been 2015. So I'm graduating from college, and I was a finance degree at a school near New York City. So naturally, everyone goes to Wall Street. And I just never felt that pull. I always was like, I'm more of an entrepreneur. I want to build a business. And I felt more excited about building business than just, going to the Wall Street world and managing money and doing investment banking or whatever it was going to be. So it turned out that my former high school baseball coach had started this international tour company. And I ended up becoming the first employee. And what we did there was I still actually part own this, but we take youth sports teams and families on international tours all over the world. And so what was amazing about it is I had a lot of freedom. My first assignment actually was, hey, you got like $2,500, go over to Europe for 3 weeks, make as many connections as you can. So, here I am, 23 years old, feeling on fire about what I get to do. But I forgot to ask one big question before I was like, let's do this, which was how much am I going to make? And so I just took the job because I loved it. And I basically had no money. And I really wanted to travel with a lot of my friends who were making a lot more money. So here I am with this problem of I want travel. I want these bucket list experiences, but I don't have money. So it's either I get what I want or I have to find a smarter strategy. And so between that and the value that these credit card points could add to that company, there was this intersection that led me to be like, oh, if I can figure this out, this is going to kill a lot of birds with one stone. I'll get the trips I want. I'll save the company money, which will add a lot of value. So it just started as this kind of like side little exploration. It turned into a real hobby and then a passion. And then ultimately that passion turned into a full obsession and then a side business. And then I launched my own company in this space about 5 years ago because there were so many business owners that needed help. And I realized I could really serve them. So I started as an entrepreneur on the business side. I was basically a number two and I got equity in that company. And then I realized the need in the market and I had solved my own problem. And I was like, I can help all these people too. And so I started a little side business, but then social media happened, all this stuff, it really exploded and took on a life of its own. And I was like, I'm going all in on this thing. And so that was about 4 years ago now. And so it's been a fun ride and a combination of things that I love, things I'm passionate about, and things that really add value to others has always kind of been the intersection of business for me.
Yeah, awesome. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the company now? How does it work? And, who are your typical clients and what's the process?
Yeah, I'll start with the typical client. So typically it's a business owner that's spending a decent amount of money every month. And our kind of threshold is like $15K a month between personal cards and business cards. Now, the reason that's important is because that's what's going to generate the points for us to then help them leverage for trips. Okay, so that's kind of criteria number one. And then they also have to have a desire for bucket list travel. We can help, get upgrades on domestic travel and get better lounges and get hotel suite upgrades. And that's great. I don't want to downplay that. And there's a lot to be saved there and a lot to be optimized. So that's kind of a little cherry on top. But for us, the real driver of the business is when someone saves $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $100,000 on a bucket list trip to Italy for 2 weeks, and they take their grandparents and the grandkids, and they all get business class, and they get to go first class. That's who we're really trying to serve, is the entrepreneur who wants luxury travel, wants the perks, but doesn't want to spend the time to figure out all these point strategies and points arbitrage and where to transfer the points and which cards they need. And they also don't want to overpay for something when there's a much better way to get the same thing they're already going to be spending money on. And so that's really who we help. And there's two main elements of the business. There's optimizing the cards, meaning getting the right cards and the right expenses so that you earn the most points and get the best status for the best upgrades. And then there's using the points effectively so that you take the points that you either currently have or continue to earn and you get double the value, triple the value, 4 or 5, 10x the value. Or another way of saying that is you get the same flight to Italy. Let's say it's $5,000 and instead of paying 500,000 points to Amex Travel, you can get it for 60,000 points, 70,000 points, 80,000 points. So, a fraction of what it would normally cost. So entrepreneurs who want to travel and then helping them really optimize their credit card spend in the way that they're using their points for their dream trips.
Yeah. Well, that so resonates for me because I love to travel to Italy, number one, and any chance we can go internationally. It's so enriching to me. It's really been such an amazing experience. And I think a lot of people just don't, if they don't travel internationally, they're really missing out, right? Because learning about cultures, making new connections. I have some friends over there that I consider some of my best friends.
Cool.
And it's just been an amazing experience. We've been able to bring our kids over there and they've learned so much through that, experience. It's really great. But I know in terms of what really hits home, what you're talking about is just that frustration. I mean, I'm definitely spending that and a lot more on credit cards because let's face it, we all do these days, right? It's just so much easier to use your card, right? And then pay it off later.
Of course.
But maybe you've got airline points or something, but trying to figure out the system and how it works is, it's like you need a master's degree
Yeah.
and you need a lot of time, right?
Well, yeah, we tend to compare it to accounting. It's like, as a business owner, you probably want to be able to look at your profit and loss and be able to tell what's happening, right? In your cash flow statements and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But you don't want to be doing your books, and you don't want to be reading the IRS code and keeping up with all these changes that the government makes and figuring out every legal loophole on your own. That's why you have a CPA. And so at a certain level, right, there's a certain value on your time. And that doesn't mean you should just not file your taxes effectively and play the tax game. You should. It's just that maybe you shouldn't be the one doing it. And so that's kind of the same way I think that you're talking about here, where that we help support with, is allowing people to save their time and still get the benefits. Yeah, you're nailing it.
Yeah. Okay. No, awesome. So what are some of the strategies that you actually employ to do that?
Yeah. So I'll kind of chunk it into 3 buckets, and this just makes it simple to understand the game, because there's a lot of there's like 100 different little tactics and nuggets and stuff.
Yeah.
So I like to kind of give a broad stroke, like here's how to think about this. And then I'll talk about the strategies of each kind of bucket, if we will. So the first bucket is to maximize your points earnings. Okay. So this means you have the right credit cards for you, because they're different for everybody, on the right expenses. Okay. So what I mean by this is, let's say someone spends a lot on advertising for their business. Well, if they have the Amex Platinum on that card, the Amex Business Platinum, that's going to earn 1 point per dollar. Okay, the Amex Business Gold earns 4. So one card difference, if someone spends 10 grand a month on ads, is hundreds of thousands of points, which is like $30, $40, $50,000 a year worth of travel from changing one credit card on one category of spend. So we need to get the right credit cards and the right expenses. And part of that is making sure you earn the right points, because they're all worth different things, right? So like, if you would know this obviously, but if I were to offer you, $100 US or 110 Mexican pesos, you'd be like, I'll take the dollars because it's a smaller number, but it's worth a lot more. Well, if you don't know that with points, you might be earning tons of Delta miles or tons of Hilton points, and you're earning more volume, but they're worth a fraction of what an Amex point or a Chase point is worth. Okay, so we really need to get the right points first. If we don't have that, we can't do the rest of the game here. Okay, so that's the first bucket. The second thing is to maximize the value of the points, and this is through transferring them. Okay, so this is kind of the meat and potatoes of it, and we can dive into it in a bit. But basically, the essence here is you're going to convert your points from the bank program into the airline or hotel loyalty programs. And there's a way to kind of gamify this and find arbitrage. So these airlines are part of alliances, and some of these airlines in the alliance will partner with the banks. So what ends up happening is you'll find, like, I'm flying actually to Japan for the ski trip. We're going down through Taipei at first. And we're flying a new Asian airline called Starlux. It's a really nice luxury business class flight. I actually converted points into Alaska Airlines through American Express to book Starlux. Okay, so I didn't turn right into Starlux. I use these partnerships. So that's how you maximize the value, and that's kind of the essence of it. And then the third piece is to upgrade and optimize your travel. That's about unlocking status, maximizing your suite night certificates, getting TSA pre-check and clear, making sure you have the best lounges when you're traveling, getting free bags, free first class upgrades, early check-in, late checkout, all the things that just make travel more comfortable, more seamless, more easeful. And that's usually going to be a benefit of, again, having the right cards and getting status. So those are kind of the 3 chunks to think about this. Maximize the points earnings from the right cards, maximize the value of the points, and then maximize your upgrades is really the 3 buckets to think about this in.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And that was really just hitting a pain point that I have, right? Is, let's say we want to fly to Italy, there's only certain airlines that I can actually take from here. And had I been using the points and award system of another airline, but it's not flying from here, it always feels like, oh, what's it worth, right?
Right.
Or the same thing with these lounges. You join one lounge and then you go travel somewhere, and I'm in Phoenix and like, hey, they don't have a lounge here. Right. So do you guys have all of that figured out? Because it seems like there's just not enough flexibility in terms of lounges, right?
Yeah. So like when we work with someone, we kind of create their travel DNA. So we do a pretty extensive intake. We're looking at like what matters to you, because what matters to you and to me may be very different when it comes to travel, our home airport, the amount we spend on different things. So that's going to create a different plan, which will unlock different perks. For some people, they don't care about lounges. Like to me, I'm like, I love a lounge. Like it's my favorite thing. Like if I'm flying, I get 4 hours. I'll go show up early to airports on certain flights because I'm like, I want to hang in the lounge for 3 hours. I gotta, there's some that have a pool of the tarmac view. It's like crazy. So we always are looking at those specific nuances and making sure that it's really custom to you. Another one, a lot of people are traveling more domestic for conferences and business events, and they're like, hey, I do one trip a year to Europe or whatever. Like I want that, But man, if you can help me save on the hotel suite upgrades when I have business travel, because like I'm paying $1,000 a night for these upgrades, and I'd love to get these suites for free. Like that's an easy low hanging fruit opportunity, and that may not be relevant for you, but super relevant for them. So it really is kind of a custom thing with that. But all those things are possible. And even to your point, where you're talking about the airlines and the options that you have when you fly to Europe, that's going to be custom to you too, because everyone has different parameters, right? Some people will say, I only fly nonstop, non-negotiable. And others will say, well, if it's a great experience and I need to do a one stop, like I'll do an hour hop to Atlanta or to Charlotte or maybe to New York to get the best business or first class flight over to Italy. So it's preferential. And we're like, when we're doing stuff, we're custom fitting it to the client, because everyone has a different kind of taste.
Yeah, makes sense. And do you guys do any work for private flights, right? Because I know a lot of private charters also, they'll have, they've got a couple of seats that, you can pick up, right, at fractional cost, but the same thing, it's right, trying to understand the system and make it work.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's no real overlap with points and private travel. The closest thing would be JSX, Jet Suite X, which is like semi-private. And basically the only benefit you get there is you earn JetBlue miles when you fly on them, but you can't really use the points. There's not like a lot to gamify there. And that's a great kind of point I'll just hit on real quick, because people ask, well, how far does this points game go? What can I use these for? And I'm happy to share like good versus bad usages of these points. But overall, you're looking for business and first class international flights is going to be your number one value driver. And then luxury hotels is going to be number two. If you want to use points for rental cars, for Airbnbs, for private flying, for trains, technically you can do it through the bank's travel site, but it's just worse value than what the points should be worth. So I don't advise it. But if someone's really like, that's the only thing they're going to do, and that's the only way to use their points, and they still can. But typically I don't recommend it.
Got it. Yeah, I was going to ask that too. Do you guys have any, maybe it's partnerships or any other capabilities around travel itineraries once you get to destinations?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we integrate with local travel agent partners that will help with that kind of stuff. For those that want it, you want the black car pickup, you want restaurants mapped out, you want tours, activities, and excursions, that stuff. Our team will help advise on that, like natively in our own services. But for people that like really want the I just want the white glove, we have partners that will handle that stuff on the ground. And we actually have a client right now. They're doing a big real estate investor. He's doing a family trip. They're going Hawaii to Japan to Sydney to New Zealand for like 6 weeks, like family of 4, business and first class. They want the whole thing. They're like, we want bungee jumping here. We want to stay at the peninsula here. And so some of that stuff is not a points related thing. So for us, it's, when we're thinking about our business model, for us, it's like, what does the client want? They want an easeful experience. And so we always try to provide as many options as we can to make that happen, end to end, through card planning all the way to using points to the on the ground access as well.
Yeah, no, that really makes sense, because if you can get on the ground access, one of the things I've struggled with is, most tour operators, you talk about Italy, for instance, and people say, well, we're going to, Rome, Florence, and Venice. And you talk about some small town in Liguria, they have absolutely no idea, but there's unbelievable experiences that are so authentic, like going to an olive vineyard, somewhere, or an orchard, right? And just, having that experience that's totally local, and no one would really know about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's
totally.
kind of a local thing.
Yeah. I mean, fortunate for me, because I have that background with a tour company, what was really cool about that is we were taking sports teams to international countries. So we do a lot of Italy. We'd actually be bringing a lot of baseball teams to Italy. And what was cool about it is, because you're playing local teams in sports, it's not like all the big teams are in Rome, right? In fact, one of the hot spots of baseball in Europe randomly is in Nettuno, Italy, which is like an hour and a half south of Rome. But this is a really cool historical spot, because it's where the U.S. military, when they were like stationed over in Europe for World War II, they spent a lot of time in Nettuno. So baseball really picked up. But there's this beautiful small beach town. There's one of, if not the biggest American military cemetery in Europe is there. So you can go see these incredible grounds. And it's like this small town, you can get an entire pizza the size of this, like the table, for like €4, right? Just an unbelievable experience. Yeah. And to your point, I've never heard anyone mention Nettuno that's not Italian. So it's like, if you do go off the beaten path, it is totally where the juice of the experience is to me. I always say, hey, if you're going for the first time, maybe do the starter kit, do the sampler and go see Tuscany and Rome and Northern Italy and kind of get a flavor for what you like. But you got to go deeper after that, because to your point, it's like there's so much out there. And yeah, it's such a fun adventure every time.
Yeah. To that end, do you guys curate experiences or anything?
We haven't done a lot of the experience side. We've been mostly focused on like our lane, which is primarily like getting the best value for the points and then integrating that with the booking side for those that want that side. The individual experiences, what we've done is we've partnered with people who do that. So we actually have a really cool, and your group may love this if they don't know about it. We've partnered a lot with a group called Insider Expeditions. And so they just did a sailing on the Ritz-Carlton yacht for 3 days off the coast of Portugal. High level like entrepreneurs and investors and philanthropists. They actually then sailed across the Atlantic. They do all sorts of cruises, like really luxury high-end cruises to Antarctica or like up to Greenland through the Arctic Circle. So they're really cool. So we'll partner with groups like that. Or there's another group called Maverick that does really high-end things like Necker Island and stuff like that with Richard Branson. So we'll partner with some of them because there's a percentage of our clientele that will love that kind of stuff. And then we basically help facilitate the best way to get there. So we'll be like, hey, here's the trip in Portugal. If you want to jump on this itinerary, sign up there. Let us know. We'll help you with the flights. That's kind of how we integrate with that so that we're giving them the best access, but we're also able to stay focused in our lane as well.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Some of the experiences are just amazing that I've seen. I've literally seen like the whole James Bond experience where, you can drive one of the old Aston Martins. It starts out in the UK.
Yeah.
Go get one of the, vodka martinis, that Bond used to hang out in. And then you kind of travel across to Montenegro and some other great places. But
epic.
Yeah, these are some epic things. And, I highly, recommend to folks to just really start thinking about some experiences like this that you can create in life, because when you think about it, when you're 90, when you're 100, these are the things that you're going to remember, right? It isn't going to be the size of your bank account, right? It's these memorable experiences with your family, your friends, your colleagues that you created. So it's really fantastic. How about on the from a corporate standpoint, do you guys help this also? So like, let's say we're hosting our mastermind event at the Ritz here coming up. And do you guys help, set those kind of things up too?
We don't really help specifically with that. We'll help make sure that when you're planning that, it's optimized from a points earning standpoint. So you're at the Ritz, right? Yeah. You definitely want to have a Marriott card for that one, because you put that spend on that card. If you unlock status, you're going from earning, maybe 1, 2, or 3 points per dollar on certain cards to 11, 15, 20 points per dollar. So you throw an event like that, and all of a sudden after the event, you're like sitting on a mountain of points. So we'd help with that. And then if there's like certain VIPs and stuff like that you're flying in to maybe speak, like my Japan trip, I have 2 speakers that are coming to present. And what I'll do is I'll often use points to bring them in. Like I can write it off for the event. It could be an event cost, but when I can use points for that kind of thing, I'll sometimes opt for that. So that's more of what you would want to look at this from a vantage point of like card optimization and points optimization. We don't go into the travel planning side or like event planning side of that. That's a lot of scope for us. But it's more focused on how do you leverage the point side.
Got it. Tell us about your Japan trip.
Yeah. So, I mean, you were kind of hitting on the head. I think about for me, and this kind of came from like when I was growing up, I had a very close experience with what felt like a near-death kind of experience. So I guess at a young age, I kind of had this perspective of like, just started to think a little bigger, like, what are we doing here? What do I want my life to be about? Like, what's important? And meaningful experiences with people I care about, doing like what I call like bucket list things, really like having these trips and experiences that make you come alive. I found these to continuously be some of the most fulfilling, most memorable parts of my life. And I kind of have always had this similar to what you're saying, this like rocking chair philosophy where I'm like, I need to like talk to 90-year-old Eli and be like, what is he going to say like to do in the situation? And like, how do I make sure that guy doesn't have a lot of regrets about things? And so I started creating this kind of series of trips because I'm like, I already want to ski and I'd love to do it with more friends, but I want to integrate. I'm an entrepreneur. I can't help but grow my business. Right. But like, I was like, how do I combine this? So I found this formula of beautiful, unforgettable destination to go do something that people already want to do. This group already loves to ski. And then you integrate a way to bring people together and unify people and set up, opportunity for deep conversations. And then you sprinkle in enough business element where people are getting a lot of this growth element. But honestly, a lot of the conversations that are most impactful happen on the chairlift because you have this space to go outside of the conference room or whatever and go have fun and really get to know each other. And so I ran one of these and it was, after we finished, everyone that was there, there are people that go to a lot of masterminds like, dude, that was like one of the best experiences I've ever had in terms of like a business event. Can you do more of those? I was like, sure. So the next year we went to Chamonix, France, And this was really cool when we flew into Milan. And I'll tell you about this one because there's an Emirates flight that actually goes from JFK to Milan. I just flew that in December as well when I proposed to my fiance. So it's the A380. It's a double decker. It has an in-flight bar and it has shower in first class. You've got Dom Perignon, caviar, like crazy awesome stuff.
Nice.
And it's a killer deal. The one in December I flew would have cost $20,000 out of pocket for the two of us. I paid $200 and about 200,000 points, which is nothing. Okay. Wow. So I'll bookmark that. So we went to Chamonix. I got 25, there's 45 people in the group, but 25 of us flew over in business class together on that flight. So like you can imagine you're 10 minutes into a flight, the seatbelt sign comes off, right? You hear the ding and then like 20 guys stand up and go to the back to this in-flight bar to have like a cocktail party in the sky. And so it's always just been about how do we create the most memorable experiences we can so we can have these like cherished things to look back on. And that's been the essence of the Japan trip, those other ski trips. And that's why I create them.
Hey, it's Dave Wolcott here. Let me ask you something. Are you tired of the same old financial advice that leaves you spinning your wheels? If you're ready to discover the real secrets the ultra wealthy use to build unstoppable wealth, then I've got something just for you. My new book, The Holistic Wealth Strategy, is your ticket to learning the proven strategies that the top 1% don't want you to know. This book isn't just about money. It's about building a life of purpose, freedom, and lasting impact. And I want to give you a free copy. Visit holisticwealthstrategy.com and get yours today. It's time to level up your financial game and create the future you deserve. Yeah, totally love it. Really good. What about from a productivity and standpoint?
Mm-hmm.
Personal productivity, right? We're big into professional development.
Yep.
Also biohacking here, and as a big traveler yourself, what are some of the top tips you might have out there for actually, taking care of yourself when you're traveling internationally?
It's a fantastic question because it's really important. If you take a trip and you're dead after, and it takes 4 days off of your working day, work week, that's a problem. So first thing, I mean, for me, really basics: sweat, workout. Like before I travel, I'm always trying to work out. When I go over there, I tend to, like, if I'm going overseas, I tend to build in a day for like a recovery day. So in Europe, there's so many really awesome like spas, like big spa complexes that have 20 saunas and the cold plunge and there's like these things where you can go hang out for a whole day, read a book and relax. And so I always try to build in a day like that, because if I have one day like that where I just rehydrate and all that stuff, usually I've had a few champagnes on the way over. It's how I tend to travel for business class. So that's another thing. So building in a day. I think another piece is setting proper expectations. I can be really hard on myself if I'm not producing at 100%. And the reality is like when I go to Europe, those first few days might be 80%. Like it's not going to be 100%, but that's part of the trade-off. I mean, that's having a whole life too. It's like not every day is going to be all about business production. Sometimes it's about having enriching experiences too. So that trade-off is worth it, but it's proper expectation setting that, at least for me, helps me not be upset with myself about that. And then the third thing I'll say is there's a really cool product actually that just came out from a guy named Andrew Herr. It's called FlyKit. And so what this is, it's basically an app that's synced with a protocol based on your travel and your circadian rhythm. And so he's a guy I met at an event a couple of years back, and he was like a former military ops guy and helped with like high performance there. And so what it does is it basically gives you certain doses of like vitamin D and blue light blockers and caffeine and certain sleeping kind of like melatonin type things. So when you travel, you do this, you follow this sequence, and if you follow it correctly, the jet lag is like way minimized, and basically it custom fits to you. So FlyKit is a pretty cool little program out there that will help with the jet lag side. I tested it once, quite candidly. It didn't work for me because I had a bunch of friends on the flight and I was having a few too many drinks anyways. My other friend who just stuck to the plan, he woke up and he was like, I was like, tell me about it. How do you feel? He's like, 100%, feel great. I was like, that's awesome. So those are a couple, but it is definitely a challenge that a lot of people face. And I think it's one that's well worth it if you can just optimize a little bit, because that experience is still, to me, where the juice is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a big opportunity for people out there because, you know, you spend all this money and effort and resources, right, to go on this trip and you don't want to, you know, feel exhausted when you get
Exactly.
there. My protocol recently has been, definitely blue light blockers is key. It's all about getting your circadian rhythm, you know, adapted to that new schedule.
Yeah.
And I was trying my last trip, I was trying high dose melatonin, and then also NAD, you know, upon arrival, which made a significant, you know, impact.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the
pretty
optimal
good.
way to do it is definitely not to drink. You definitely fly business class for sure, so you can lay flat and sleep. You hydrate like crazy. You wear the compression socks, and you probably fast a little bit too. Again, for me, my current values are like I want to enjoy the experience a little more. But for someone who's like, it's not worth it for me, then I would say you got to cut all that stuff out and just be like, treat this like you're going to sleep, you know, and that's on those long flights, and that will definitely change it up for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Eli, give us a couple other examples of people who've benefited from the program.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of folks I think that we've crossed paths with. As I mentioned, Amber Spears runs a big mastermind and is a big kind of, she's big in the marketing and online entrepreneur space. But it was really cool because, you know, for her, like a lot of our clients, it's not that money's the issue, right? You could pay for these trips, and many people do. It's that it feels kind of silly to overpay for something when you don't have to. It feels like a little wasteful, maybe a little guilty. And for some people, honestly, it's funny how the psychology works. I talked to a client of ours about a month ago, and he had just made $500,000 that day in NVIDIA stock, right? So like he was doing okay, but he was still flying economy. I'm like, why? Like, what are you doing? Like you have like 10 million points. What are you doing? He's like, I don't know. I just never figured out how to get the value. And so when I showed him how to move the points around, he was like, oh, now I can justify it. It was this justification piece that came in. He was like, now it makes sense. Now I feel good about doing it. Because if you have values out of alignment with like, I don't overspend or I don't do this, then, you know, you might be having a $10 million net worth and still flying economy and being uncomfortable because that's just kind of how your values are set up. So anyways, long story short, for Amber, for example, she came to us because she was like, I really want to take my grandma to Turkey and go with my partner and my parents and stuff. And so we put this whole trip together. It was 5 of them. They had the lay flat business class flights. Her grandma had never experienced that. So she's showing her like 87-year-old grandma this like lay flat bed experience. It was mind blowing to her. She's like super just elated from the whole experience. And for her, the ability to make an impact on her grandma like that and feel really good about it financially was what made that so juicy and powerful. We've got another client, a guy, Glenn Ledwell, who's Australian. He created a cool site called Mind Movies. And you know, if you're into the Joe Dispenza world at all, like he references that a lot. And Glenn's a killer entrepreneur too. And he's Australian, so he'll go back from Florida to Australia to Barcelona a lot. So for him, it's not like necessarily all vacations, but it's just a lot of long haul international business class travel. And in the first year with him, we saved him about 130 grand on travel. And compared to what he would have done, which would have been 13 million points through Amex, we got it for like, I think like 1.2 million or something. So we saved him an exorbitant amount of money and points and then just made it easeful for him. So there's tons of those examples, you know, a lot of honeymoons type trips. And one of the philosophies that I have is like, especially for the guys out there, I'm like, you know, most people do a honeymoon once in their lifetime. I'm like, do a honeymoon once a year. Like go pick a different place off the world map, Maldives, African safari, Japan, Thailand. You know, you want to go do a castle in Scotland. You want to go see the Northern Lights. You want to go sip wine in a vineyard in Italy. Like create that kind of bucket list and be like, every year we're going to do a 7 to 14 day kind of mini honeymoon. And you make it about the relationship, and now it adds depth and stuff like that. And so that's kind of a philosophy that I love to have. And so we try to encourage people like, hey, you did Bora Bora for your actual honeymoon, but what about going to do the Greek islands next year for a celebration trip, right? Because you can. And that's part of why we got into business and built the businesses we built, was so we could have the freedom to fully enjoy life to the max. And so that's what ends up happening for those that are willing to embark on that journey.
Yeah, totally love that, Eli. It's so great for people to just start thinking that way. And we talk a lot about that on the show, is mindset, right? Everything is mindset. But when you start to get some of those different ideas, and I think it's hard, right? Because we're all kind of doing our daily grind, right? Moving through things, and it's hard to think about these things. But when you can be intentional, and now is a great time in the year to think about your next 12 months and what is that, you know, bucket list trip that you're going to do, or that next 90-day trip to actually get away and do that. But those are some just great ideas to think about it. And also, it also really resonated just the mindset, right, of how you're thinking about it, because it's kind of like if you go into a mall, right? You're paying retail for everything. You know, everything is at the like complete max. So, you know, when you go on an airline, right, and you go in there and you click business class, you know you're paying absolute, retail price for that, and you want a good deal. Right. So I love the fact that you can kind of get this to the point of like getting the experience and then really getting the value and just, really hacking your way to do that.
Right. 100%. Yeah. And if I can, I'd love to give one tip for people that are listening to this, just in terms of getting the best value and the way to think about potentially setting up their travel and planning, if I can share that. So there's really two key things. If you're thinking about like, how do I get the best value and experience for points, there's going to be two key things that are going to really unlock this. Number one is planning ahead properly, because you were just talking about the timing of the year. And the second is flexibility. So with planning ahead, the best time to book, if you want like the best time, I'm not saying the only time, but the best time, it's actually around like 10 to 11 months out. Because what will happen is that's when the airlines release their seats for those routes, and the most points availability is there for good deals. Now, if you're 6 months out or 4 months out, it does not mean you won't find a deal. You will. There's just more options. And this is a game of stacking the deck in your favor. Okay. So really far out, like 8, 9, 10, 11 months out, and then really close in, I'm talking 2 weeks, a week in, a month in, that's where you tend to see the most seats. And it's because if the airline hasn't sold it and it's like, hey, we're not getting the $6,000 retail price for this, it's 2 weeks out, let's see if someone wants it on points. They'll open it up, right? The airline would rather get cash than points. So that's a tip for you there. And that will be a big game changer. Now, what's cool about that is points are refundable. So if you're going to go book a business class flight to Europe and you're like, I don't know if I'm going in 10 months, but you find a great deal and you're like, it might hit what we're looking for, then book it. And then if you need to cancel it, you just cancel, get your points back. You're not going to be stuck with one of these $5,000 airline credits on like whatever random airline that you're never going to use again. You just get your points back. Okay. So that's planning ahead. The second piece is the flexibility. Now, this is important. I really only recommend this for people that are listening to this, like higher level, busy, time is really valuable. Just for your big international trips where we're talking about saving, multiple 5 figures. If you're talking about going, from Sarasota to Vegas for a conference, don't try to be flexible for that. Just book the easiest direct thing. But if you're talking about, you want to do a month-long trip around the world and you want to go for 2 weeks, or you're going to Italy, if you can fly out of New York and you take a hop from Sarasota to New York or to Atlanta, that's going to open up a world of options. If you're saying I have to fly direct from Tampa, there may only be 2 flights that day that are operated. So now you have less options. And if you say I don't have to fly June 9th, I can fly anytime in early June. Now, all of a sudden, you've got, you think about the number of options you have. Instead of having 2 flights for that one day out of Tampa, you have, okay, I can fly out of Atlanta, I can fly out of New York, I can fly out of Orlando, I can fly out of Charlotte, and I can fly any of these days. You went from having 2 options to like 300. So the odds of you getting a great deal just went up drastically. Okay, so for your big flights where you're going across the pond, you're going across the world, that is the absolute key to finding the best deals. If you don't have that, it's not that it won't happen. It's just that it's much more difficult to stack the deck in your favor. So that's a really big tip most people miss on, because what will happen is most people will go to start searching for this if they're doing it on their own, or even if they're working with someone like us, they'll be like, I want this date, this thing. And you're just setting yourself up for failure there. If you can expand that flexibility a little bit, that's going to help a lot.
Yeah, great tips. Are there any search engines you're preferable to, like Kayak or Google Flights? Or
yeah, so for cash bookings, definitely Google Flights is the best. There's some really cool stuff you can do with how you can set filters and multi-city airports, and like it's kind of advanced. There's an advanced mode of Google Flights, let's say. So if you're trying to figure out what flights you have available, that would be a good starting point. But that's actually not going to be great for showing you points deals. It's just good for showing you kind of what airlines are operating there. Another cool tool, if you want to figure out what airlines could I even fly? Because most people, for example, have you ever flown that Emirates flight into Milan? Did you know about that one?
I know about it. I haven't taken it.
Cool. Oh, it's a well worth it experience, especially if you think about, okay, maybe I'll stop in New York for a day or two. Do you have clients? Can you parlay some meetings and stuff? I tend to do it like that. But most people don't know that Emirates flies that route because they're typically flying to Dubai because that's where the airline's based out of. So there's a cool tool called flightconnections.com. And what this will do is it'll show you just punch in the city you're flying to or from, and it will show you all the nonstop routes on all the airlines across the world. So you'll be like, oh, I didn't know that Emirates flew that route from New York to Milan. Who knew? Right? So you can start to see what kind of ways can I piece together an itinerary if you want to get creative with it and you care. That's a cool tool for that. For the points deals, this is where things get really interesting because there's a lot of different new kind of search engine points tools coming out. There's point.me, there's Roam Travel, there's one called Points. Yeah, there's Expert Flyer, there's Seats.aero. And these are all different tools, but they're all kind of built for different types of trips. So there's not really one to recommend. Some of them work all the time for certain things. Some of them don't work at all for others. So it's very situational. Like our team's using all these tools to set alerts and track deals. For the average user, there's Seats.aero as a good one. Point.me is okay. But it just really depends on the kind of trip you're looking for, and you need to know how to use them effectively to get the best deals out of it. So there's not really one like robust option yet. Maybe in a couple of years that will happen, but to date, you kind of have to manually know how to search through and sift through and find the gold.
Yeah. Are you guys using any AI tools for this?
So some of the ones I mentioned have AI integrated into them. Okay. But right now, again, there's not really a lot out there that's great with AI yet. There's a lot of challenges with that. Aside from the couple that I mentioned there's a lot of challenges with that because of the API structures with these bank programs and airlines and the way that they work. I'm not, into that world of development, but I do understand from afar, like that's one of the complexities that exists there. And, there's a lot of real-time data that has to be updated and stuff. So not a lot out there yet, but we'll see as it continues to evolve. I think there's a couple people trying to solve it, but those I've talked to that are in the AI world are like, that's like step 3 and there needs to be a step 1 and 2 first. So like I think it's still going to be a little while.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Eli, if you could give just one piece of advice to the audience about how they could really take their travel to the next level, what would it be?
It would actually be to get the right credit cards. It would be that most business owners are way overlooking the card, how important it is and how much they're leaving on the table. It is the easiest single thing you could do to unlock more travel. Because even if you don't use the points well, if you just tripled the amount of points you got, and you went from getting $1 million a year to $3 million a year, even if you don't optimize how you use them and you just use them ineffectively, you still just got 3 times as many free trips from applying for a credit card that took 45 seconds. So you think about time of inputs for a return. If you figure out how to get the right credit cards or you get help from someone like us or someone else online, that's highly worth it. And that would actually be my biggest tip. There's a lot of other things, but if we're thinking about highest leverage, that's the one.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, this has been really eye-opening. I really appreciate your time and wisdom today. If people want to learn more about your system or connecting with you, what's the best place?
Yeah, so I'll give you a couple different options depending on what you're looking for. If you're just like, hey, I like this guy, I want to follow him more and engage more, Instagram is the spot. So I'm Eli Travel Guy. So that's just going to be Instagram. And then we have a playbook. If you're like, I kind of want to get in the, figure out my game plan here, you go to freedomtravelsystems.com as our company, freedomtravelsystems.com/playbook. And you can grab that. It's the CEO points playbook. It walks you through the foundations of picking the right card for you, kind of creating your own travel DNA, figuring out what airlines are going to be relevant, how to get your hotel suite upgrades, goes a little deeper into some of these core concepts. And if you're like, hey, I just want to talk to someone from your team to potentially have you guys just help do this, you can just go to freedomtravelsystems.com and set up a call with myself or one of our team members, and we'll see what we can do to help you out.
Awesome. Really appreciate it. Thanks again, Eli.
Cool. Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Wealth Strategy Secrets. If you'd like to get a free copy of the book, go to holisticwealthstrategy.com. That's holisticwealthstrategy.com. If you'd like to learn more about upcoming opportunities at Pantheon, please visit pantheoninvest.com. That's pantheoninvest.com.